What's up, guys? Rambling Collector back here with another Warhammer 40,000 book review for everyone who watches this channel. And today I'm actually going to be talking about an Ultramarines novel called Calgar's Fury by Paul Kearney. And if I butchered that name, please let me know in the comments below. And if Paul ever sees this, I am very, very sorry. But anyways, so this book was pretty interesting just from the cover art alone, which you will see here on the next slide. And honestly, it did have its promise, but at the same time, it felt like there was something lacking. I don't know whether it was just the faction that I was reading with the Ultramarines, or whether it was just the fact that I'd stuck with Chaos for so long that it kind of felt stale. I'll give you more of my thoughts when I actually show you the book, so let's get into it. So, as you can see, the cover art did look pretty promising, and that's initially what drew me to it. However, my first assumption that this would be a Ultramarines versus Tyranid novel was sadly proven wrong the further I read into the book, and thus that kind of soured my expectations a bit. But I will say that it did have some interesting ideas and some interesting premises throughout this novel. So Calgar's Fury takes place after the whole Tyranid invasion of the Ultramarines' home sector, and they are thus recovered for a while. So the whole premise of it is that this mysterious space Hulk, which is essentially a small planetoid filled with all these mashed up ships that have been pulled together by gravitational force, has just appeared out of the warp, and it's an as of yet unidentified enemy that could be aboard this Hulk, as they call it. And I'm going to be honest with you, the idea of that sounded pretty interesting, especially since I didn't know whether it was going to be Chaos Boys again, if it was going to be Tyranids, whatever. But as soon as I read the prologue, I knew we were going to be in for more chaos. Which to me is not a bad thing, but after reading for so long of the different Chaos Marines, I was kind of hoping for something better, and I probably should have realized that when I first looked at the cover more. So either way, I was a bit disappointed that it was going to be more chaos, and no Tyranids in this one. But anyways, either way, I did want to give this book a fair chance, so I kept reading after the prologue. Needless to say, there were some moments that did grab my attention, such as how the main enemies within this book were not just Chaos Space Marines that had been corrupted. As a matter of fact, they were actually Chaos Marines that were essentially a cousin branch of the Ultramarines themselves, which made this personal for them, and that did spark a bit of my interest. But not only that, but we actually get to see more of the Adeptus Mechanicus in action, which definitely brought my attention even more, especially when I at first thought that there was going to be like a rogue Mechanicus, looked like maybe even the Dark Mechanicus, those members who rebelled and joined Chaos during the Horus Heresy. However, I would be proven wrong later on. So all in all, this book had a few ups and downs quite a bit, which all in all made for an interesting one, but not one that really grabbed my attention and has me saying, oh, this is one of the best books I've read yet. No. Because in all honesty, I think I might have gotten spoiled with some of the other Marine factions that I've read, like the Blood Angels, who are literally just walking vampires. You've got the Emperor's Children, the Black Legion, you've got the Thousand Sons. I think at this point the Ultramarines just seemed kind of meh by comparison. Especially with the fact of what I've heard behind the scenes of how the Ultramarines are always meant to win their battles, which really kind of spoiled it for me, because then, it spoils the story when you know that these guys are going to win regardless. But either way, I will say that at the very least, the most interesting character was Marneus Calgar, whom this book is named after. He definitely seemed like a pretty fascinating character, especially since he's a seasoned veteran by the looks of him. As you can see, he's all the way in the back there, with those massive power gauntlet that's firing away at God knows what. But in all honesty, It's kind of sad when the most interesting characters are the chapter master of the Ultramarines and essentially the Adeptus Mechanicus. Like, at that point, if you cannot make your Ultramarine soldiers very interesting, then there's something wrong here. Because, in all honesty, I think the main issue is that the Ultramarines are just that, the perfect soldiers, the jacks of all trades, the guys who essentially have everything you need. They don't have those interesting quirks like some of the other loyalist chapters, like the Space Wolves, who are essentially like Space Vikings, or the Blood Angels, like I mentioned before, are essentially like 7-foot-tall vampires. Or even some of the other factions that I have seen here, like the Death Watch, who are like Special Ops Xenohunters. The Ultramarines are just that, the perfect soldiers. And in all honesty, that can make them a bit stale for reading unless you are an Ultramarines fan. Either way, I still recommend this if you are an Ultramarines fan or if you just want a little bit of fun on read to just pass the time. Because that's kind of what I view this book as, something to just pass the time in between major stories like the Gaunt's Ghosts or any of the Chaos Space Marine trilogies. Like if you just want something a little bit different, but something that can really just be more of a passive read, Calgar's Fury is definitely one of them. But I will tell you, if you wanted to see something like, say, Ultramarines versus any other faction besides Chaos, however, the one factor that did make this a saving grace was the fact that this was a branch of the Ultramarines that we were seeing here who somehow fell to Chaos years ago. And we did get to see some interesting Mechanicus shenanigans as well. And this whole mystery of what the Space Hulk actually was definitely grabbed my attention with those few sparse details. But all in all, this one was one that I may not read again unless I want a passive story. But anyways, let me go ahead and give you all the final score of what I would view this book as. So, in all honesty, in the sense of being fair, I will give this book at least a 6 out of 10. At the very least, it was an okay read. Maybe not the most engaging, unlike the previous books that I have reviewed here before, but I will say it is good if you want a bit of Ultramarine action facing off against Chaos Boys, or if you want to see some Adeptus Mechanicus shenanigans on the side. All in all, I would say this is more of a passive read. Not the best one that I have seen, but luckily I've got plenty more in the collection to review at some point. And you will definitely see those in future videos. So all in all, 6 out of 10. Just an okay book to read. And if it doesn't tickle your fancy, I will definitely make sure to review something else if you will let me know in the comments below. Anyways, thank you all again for listening, and this is Rambling Collector, signing off for now. Thank you all again for listening.